Everyone is vulnerable to being pinned when life plays hardball, whether it is a physical or mental health condition. No one can stand alone. For those who are not pinned, appreciate that it could be you or loved one someday. So when you see a chance to help someone, please do. They are not weak, they are pinned. Even a slight hand up and a listening ear can begin seriously lightening the load, change, or save a life. Help end stigma. Move from being pinned to purpose. Time for a hand up.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Pin to Purpose podcast. It's really a great thrill and honor for me to be joined today by Shawn, the founder of the Real Mental Health Foundation. And as you can see, I'm wearing one of the Real's hats. I have another one, which is a toque, which is, since I'm up in Canada, is a fantastic thing to keep warm. So really happy to have both of these items, which are available to all viewers as well. But it's going to be a great conversation. I have a ton of respect for Shawn and what he's done. He's had quite a journey and has really turned it into a purpose and a global one. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to you, Shawn, to introduce yourself, and we'll start our conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Geoff. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on this podcast. And it's also been great to hang out with you first when we did the Real Summit in New York. So that was a blast. That was last October, mid-October. And we did that at Deutsche Bank. And we had about 300 people. That was the first summit, Real Summit, the intersection of finance and mental health. And then we got together again in Davos, Switzerland, which was really cool. So we did the mental health day over there and had a lot of great conversations and hanging out. So it's been great to get to know you.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Thanks, Shawn. So you've had quite a journey, and I think like a lot of people who have gotten hit somewhere in their lives, maybe unexpected, and maybe you can talk a bit about your background and then lead up to.
Sure. So you kind of have the resume, and I'm happy to go through that. So my background, I was born in Brooklyn, grew up in Long Island, New York. I went to Syracuse University. And after school, I did 15 years. I did international institutional equity sales. For people that are non-financed, that means I sold stocks to banks overseas. And then in 2007, with a partner, we started the first impact investing investment bank called Big Path Capital. And I did that for 16 years. So what we did there, we'd raise money for impact and sustainable companies, helping different companies. Then we did work called placement agent work, which is basically means raising money for private equity funds. And that's the side that I headed up. And then we put on a lot of different investor events, about 60 over the years, mostly US, some Europe. And that was my focus. And then we had an online investor portal with LPs and GPs, investors in funds and funds themselves. So it was an interesting ride, and the company's still going. I'm no longer with the company, but the company is still going. And then there's the mental health kind of side and what happened. I'm happy to get into that, Geoff, unless you had any questions.
Sure. No, well, I have a big passion for the impact investment space too, and a lot of respect for what you built and led there in the early days through just a couple of years ago. But I think it'd be interesting just to hear more, as things started happening, because I think, again, a lot of people watching this also sometimes it can be quite a surprise to realize that, anybody in the world is potentially vulnerable to a mental health condition. And we all have different challenges, but sometimes the challenges get out of control. So if you want to share more of your story, that would be great.
Sure. So on the mental health side, I would have depression from time to time in my 20s, 30s, 40s. It would kind of come, it would go. I'd go on antidepressants, I'd go off of them, but it wasn't anything too extreme. But really, it really hit the fan, as we say. It was September of 22, and at that time I was depressed. I was having trouble eating. I was having trouble sleeping. I lost 40 pounds, which is really amazing, and people would be like, "You look so great," but I never felt worse in my life because people react differently to depression or anxiety. When of course, I'm eating, but I'm not as much as I usually do. I lose my appetite. and then not really sleeping well. And then the depression, it was growing. I think especially not eating and sleeping, the system kind of breaks down some. I think rest is really super important to me. So then it was December 19th of 22, and I was on a Zoom call. It came to a head, and was on the call, and I couldn't really speak, and I was just feeling super weird, and I was suicidal. Telling my wife, I don't want to be here anymore. Please freaking kill me. So most wives don't want to hear that. Some might. That's my joke, but luckily not my wife. So that's a pretty good sign to start. But then the question is, okay, you're kind of in this really strange place, and what do you do? So, and we have really no clue. So we ended up going to the emergency ward. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, at a hospital, Emory. And that was also kind of strange, just being in the hospital, like, what's wrong with me? I don't know. And when I was there, they brought out someone on like a Zoom machine, telemedicine, basically, asking me all these questions that they usually ask you around mental health. And then they said, do you want to go to the psych ward? And now I don't know what that means, but yeah, I want to go somewhere. So I don't know. I'll let you, if you have any questions, Geoff, I'm happy to.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, I'm well, this is a compelling story, and I've talked to you before and listened to you before, but I think
Sure.
especially for some of the listeners for the first time, it's really I'm kind of in it as if I'm watching a movie now, and it's enthralling.
Sure, I'll put you back in your seat. So fine, we're gonna go. So that evening I packed up my sound machine, my eye mask, my computer, not really understanding where I was going. And then when I got there, there was this lovely woman, and she was signing me in, and like my second grade teacher, and then the next minute I'm in another room, and there's this lovely police officer. I mean, super nice, but searching all my stuff, and this other woman, because obviously you can't have any of those things that I was talking about, because I think me and my wife were like, we need somewhere to kind of chill out a little bit, but it wasn't exactly, it didn't register. But it did register when they started checking me for these things. I mean, you can't even have a book cover there. So it's a place you don't hurt yourself, right? So I got in there, and I remember them showing me around, and I remember them showing me my room, and it was like a small bed on the floor, and like it wasn't pleasant. I'm not saying that it's not the right place for folks, because some folks it could be very helpful. For me, it was totally a little bit of a shock. Not a little bit, a lot of a shock. So I was there for 2 days. Then I got out. I went home. So I'm 56 now. I was 54 then. I have a 16 and 17-year-old, and my wife was obviously at the house. And then my mom is 83. She lives in Long Island, New York. So she came down. So my wife and my mom were basically taking shifts while watching me. 12-hour shifts, literally, one sleeping on the couch, then vice versa. And it's kind of surreal to talk about that, because it's almost like I'm talking about a different person, because so they were watching me, and then I wanted to go back to the company that I co-founded in 2007, but I had two partners, and sometimes things don't work out with partners. So my partners ended up buying me out of the firm that I co-founded. That was great. I got some money, but my company, and I say my company, was my whole identity. It was my whole life. It was my whole existence. So when that happened, I fell deeper into depression. I started shaking uncontrollably. It was kind of wacky. People thought I had Parkinson's, because it kind of looked like that. But luckily that wasn't the case. And then another guy comes into the story. His name is Brent. And Brent, we were friends through Little League baseball. They have that in Canada too, I think. But
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes softball because we don't have big enough parks.
Well, my daughter plays softball too. Yeah, Brent was my friend through baseball. Our kids played together, and then Brent was friendly with my wife. I always say not too friendly, but he was friendly.
Yeah,
So my wife, her name is Blanca. She just had a feeling, and she texted Brent, and basically the text said something like, "Sean's in a bad place," and Brent came back right away. He's not a therapist or anything, but he had gone through something similar around 10 years ago. So he became what I call, and this also goes to the foundation, as you know, a mental health sponsor, basically a buddy, walking, talking, hanging out. We'd walk around a local park. And I think it's really powerful. And that's also what the reel is about, is when you find someone else, or you can tell someone else, dude, I know exactly how you feel, right? I've been there. Maybe you don't want to get out of bed. You don't want to take a shower. Maybe you don't want to be alive, right? And you think that that's just never going to end because you just all you see is darkness. But it's great to have someone else to be like, dude, that's going to end, right?
Yes,
And
right.
and I don't know, maybe you don't know. I can't tell you the timing, but I can tell you that it's going to end. So that was super helpful to have Brent helping me. And then I went away to 2 treatment centers, mental health treatment centers, not like the psych ward, different, but I went away to a place in Weimar, California. And then I went to another place in Hollywood, Florida. Take away your phone. You're in therapy all day. I have, that was another whole experience, but very interesting. And then I got back about 20 months ago, and me and Brent, we were talking on the phone, and we were saying, that was serious, that was real. And I said, yeah, man. I said, yeah, that was real. I said, that's what we're going to call it. We're going to call it the real. And then, of course, he asked me, well, what is it? Right? That's the natural question. And of course, I said, I have no idea, but I know there's a lot of men, women, and families suffering. And I think that we might be able to help them with some things that we learned. So obviously there's more to the story, Geoff, and then what we're doing, etc. But that's the intro.
It's an incredible journey, and I've seen and watched and participated, like you said, coming out to your conference in New York and going over to Davos, and very excited about the one you're having upcoming in London. Sure. But I'm also reflecting on, you talked about going for a walk with Brent. And I know the different pieces of the puzzle that I guess you're able to put together through your previous experience as a convener and, the first investment bank in the impact investment space, the lessons you learned of gathering people. And so, but the walk is an interesting one too, because I want to ask you, you've now created these walks around the world where you're getting many, many ambassadors. And from what I understand, hope to have 1,000 or more in a certain period of time. So were the walks with Brent like part of the kind of puzzle pieces to say, hey, this is something very important and we should do it at scale?
Yeah, I don't think at that specific time when we were walking, I was not thinking about any of this, and I didn't have some plan like I'm going to come out the other side and I'm going to do all this. I did have a little inkling when I was in some of the treatment centers, and I was thinking, how do I use this experience, for something good, right? Take the pain and make it into something powerful. So, but I think there's something about just walking is pretty simple. Everybody does it, right?
Sure.
And just walking and talking is just makes sense. Go ahead, Geoff.
No, it's interesting. My own lived experience in hospitalization, I would echo what you're saying, because at the time I would never have imagined how to be able to get out. I was in a dark place. And that's partly why, I came up with the metaphor, one way to look at it, just being pinned, because sometimes you actually cannot get up on your own.
Exactly.
And in fact, for anybody in any situation, they shouldn't have the shame, because it's part of our common humanity. There's no shame in talking to someone. They don't have to open their kimono to the world, but they should feel comfortable enough to talk to someone and get on a healing journey. But I echo with what you're saying, because I think that resonates completely. And yet, from the people that I met in the hospital and otherwise, and, and my experience and what you're saying, I think it's a universal thing, like to remind people that this too shall pass, so to speak, but you need to have that hand up, or, the fantastic work that you're doing through the Real Foundation and creating community. So be interested to hear more stories also as you've been building the Real Foundation and the types of, things that you've met and helped tons of people, which is great. So just different stories along those lines.
So, and also along with what you're saying, right? We both have a story. I call it the real talk, basically, but it's not that unusual, maybe to the extent, and I always say I was at a 10, that's a bad place, but every single human is at a 2, a 4, a 6, or an 8 at some time. You don't want to get to a 10, but this is the most uncommon thing that people talk about, and they feel kind of strange about talking. So that's the whole stigma thing. But jumping a little bit to the foundation and the walks. So mental health's complicated, a lot of pieces, but pieces that were super helpful for me was the power of conversation and community. So the foundation is really based on that, and it's based on 3 C's. It goes conversation, goes to community, goes to change. So, and the first C is conversation. So, and the talk, I was saying this, I call this the real talk, and I've done it all over the country, all over the world. It's more like a conversation. Been in a lot of different cities and telling the story, and I tell the story. I usually stop in the middle, say I don't feel like talking anymore, and then other people tell their stories. I don't ask them to tell their stories, but they do, because it kind of breaks down the stigma. People feel more comfortable, etc. So on the conversation side, what we plan on doing is one guy telling his story is terrific, but how about 10? How about 100? How about 1,000? All makes and models. So amazing. That you go on the internet and you will see, oh, sure, I'm a finance guy, but maybe there's an accountant, maybe there's a policeman, fireman, whatever it is that's telling their story, and it has a certain look, it has a certain feel. So in essence, kind of modeling a TED Talk, but not a TED Talk. It's a real talk, but the same kind of thought process. And then the second piece is the community, right, which was super helpful for me. And I was talking about Brent, but there were tons of folks that just kind of came out of most unusual places that really helped me. Also, when I was in the treatment centers, I was in one treatment center. There were people from prison. There were homeless people. And I tell a story about a guy who really helped me out. His name was Nick. He had been in prison for 12 years, solitary for 2 years. When I saw him, I was terrified of him, but it doesn't matter, right? So it goes conversation, it goes to community, and we're also, we're working on an app. I won't go too deep into it, but and part of that, and part of about the walks and what you're talking about is we do these walks. So we have close to 40 ambassadors now, and the ambassadors are guys all over the planet. I think we're in 6 or 7 countries now, 3 continents, and it's really simple. It's not very complicated. So around the 3rd Saturday of every month, we do a walk where guys get together and they do a walk. So, from Sweden to Vancouver to now Hong Kong, and the plan is to expand that to try to have 1,000 ambassadors by the end of 2026. And it's usually, based around a local park. So in any town or city, you could have 10 or 20 or 30. So, those are some of the things we're doing.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And this is another topic, and I know you're very involved in this, and it's a big piece of the puzzle, but, with your investment background, obviously, and we're not going to talk specifics about any funds or anything, but just as the whole space, so the potential to grow investment in the mental health space. And then at Davos, there were wonderful people that, you're connected with, that through the mental health day, also at the Brain House. But I wonder if you could share a few thoughts on, because some people come at this who from also the business opportunity, as of course, will help a lot of people as well.
So if you look at it kind of big picture, what is the goals? So I'll break it down. So one is, help 10 million men with their mental health by 2030. But the second side of that is to help move $10 billion of new capital into mental health by 2030. And that goes more to, and we both, you still am, I am kind of in impact investing, is that background where we had the first impact investing investment bank and kind of saw how that space grew, started in 2007, and impact investing was pretty nascent. Now there's, figures from the global impact investing network that impact investing is like a $1.5 trillion industry. So I saw that up front, and I would say my firm, like many other firms, was super helpful in moving that ball forward. And one thing that we did a lot at my old firm, which I think was super helpful, especially in the beginning, is we put on a lot of convenings, a lot of events. We had this whole series called the Impact Capitalism Summit that we do. We also had this event called the Five Fund Forum. And these events were going on for 10, 15 years. So same thought processes, especially when the industry is just kind of building, you need to educate the people. People, this, investors don't invest if they just don't get it, right? And there's a lot of buzzwords in mental health, a lot of buzzwords in impact investing. So on that side and moving the $10 billion, that's one side of it, is to have these different events. Like we did do New York, we did Davos, we're doing London, and then we're going to do some other road shows, but also do that annually. So every year we're going to do that event. And what it also does, and I think you saw it, is brings in new people, because in any industry you have your kind of usual folks. In mental health and impact investing, you go to events, or if it's automotive or whatever, pharmaceutical, if you go to an event, you're usually going to see a lot of same people. That's normal. But I think the ability that we have is, and you've seen this, is to widen that net. So for example, in New York, we had a group of more impact investing people. We also had the mental health people. And then since I traveled a lot around and met a lot of family offices, we had a lot of those folks. So just bring in all these different players together, I think that helps expand the market. So I'm not raising $10 billion, but you create that ecosystem where people are connecting and coming together. That's happening already, right? I have to. It's hard to track exactly, but things are happening, and millions of dollars are moving. And then we're also working on our own fund that's currently in formation. And I was first talking about this, Geoff, right, as a fund of funds, but it's morphed some to just a later stage private equity fund around mental health. So more to come on that. But if you have a larger fund, and a lot of the funds, and this in impact investing in the beginning, there were a lot of smaller funds, 25, 50 million. Obviously, that's a lot of money, but in the world of private equity, it's rather small. So if you get some bigger folks, and this happened in impact when people like KKR and Bain and Carlyle came in and they had $1 billion fund. Someone might say, I don't want to invest in those, but then they are more willing to invest, in smaller funds. So the same exact idea here. So we want to have a fund of some size, and I think that helps the whole industry. Hopefully.
Right. No, go to a different question in the last few minutes as I just wanted to ask you about more of the lessons learned that you continue to, sharpen or it reinforces what you're doing. But you hear stories and you listen to people and you engage around the world. So other kind of things, without obviously naming names or anything, but just that may have stood out in the last couple of months of news stories or stories of hope and maybe even the challenges, obviously, that all of this work is trying to deal with.
Sure, that's a good question. I'm also going to frame it when people ask, how did you get better? And I'm not perfect, but I feel much better. And I think the thing that helped me the most, I said the power of conversation community is super helpful. But for me also, it's not like a new technology, but kind of just looking at the world differently and having a new prescription in your glasses and some simple things that aren't any new technologies. But, it's just more kind of just seeing things different and you always hear these things like, you're enough. But if these hard things are hard to ingrain, but to know that, yeah, you are enough. You don't need to be more, have more, even though we're told all these things. I'm not saying this is easy to talk to yourself and get that through, but that's a fact. Also, we have something around, again, not a therapist, a psychiatrist, but I've listened to them, around 30,000 thoughts or so going through your head in a day. And if you track down every scenario, and I used to do that, especially at night, you're kind of like, why did I do this? Why did I do that? And you run around these things, they're super exhausting. But if you just realize that, these thoughts are going to kind of come and go, like clouds, it's just going to keep you a little calmer. And obviously, this is obvious, but happiness really comes from the inside, not outside, but we're taught everything else about that. And again, it's hard to ingrain that and kind of live that way, but and I'm not saying I do that all the time, but it's just kind of something where you can kind of grab that thought and be like, okay, whatever happened here, I just realized that. I think another important thing is, who do we treat the worst? Probably ourselves. Beat up ourselves the worst. Something happens and beating the crap out of yourself. But if something happened to a friend, you wouldn't treat him like that. Right. Another important thing was to realize that you don't have a time machine, because I would be ruminating on things, thinking about them over and over. Why did I do this? Why did I do that? And then a therapist said a good thing. She said to me, Shawn, do you have a time machine? And I said, no, mine's broken. But you don't have a time machine, even though you think you might have a time machine. So those are more just, of course, get out to nature, walking, exercise, all that stuff. But those things are also they're free, right? It's in your head, but just kind of looking at things differently. And then if you're going to lessons, I think, Geoff, one of the biggest lessons I learned is that I couldn't tell you how many people I spoke to, and it doesn't matter what, men, women, it doesn't really matter. And I would tell them, the story, and they would say, Shawn, I never told anyone this, but. Mm-hmm. And then they tell me their story. And was I surprised? No, not after about the 100th one. I wasn't really surprised.
Right.
Of course, this is everywhere. It's just humans. Or I even go with my kids and I be on the highway, right? Atlanta, there's a lot of traffic. See all these cars, and there's a story going on in every car, right?
Absolutely.
And you think you're on the highway, you're alone, but you're really not. You're with all these other folks, but they're just sitting in their cars. So it's things like that. And again, it doesn't discriminate where you are, who you are, rich, poor. It doesn't. And the flip side, it kind of brings all people together.
Right.
So I think that's important. And I also think, a lesson I learned is when I was in that state, that was the very worst. It was horrible. Yeah. And you kind of look back and say, when I was there, I was like, that was maybe the worst thing that ever happened to me. But now I can look back and be like, wait a second, could that have been the best thing that ever happened? Because these other things happened because of that.
That's right.
So you just don't know. And the other thing is that things always change. That's the one constant. I'm not saying anything new that no one knows. I'm just kind of bringing up these are just truths.
Yeah, no, amazing. And I love that you've got a great sense of humor. You throw in jokes in different,
sure.
And this is always a key for everybody, obviously, too, because in our darkest moments, we don't have much of a sense of humor necessarily, unless somebody helps us out or as we get there. I just had a funny, quick experience in my own, hockey league up here. They have an annual awards dinner, so the guys like to make fun of people a bit. But so somebody was reading a speech about how much my game had improved, right? So he's reading a speech, and everybody's starting to applaud. And then somebody comes up and taps him on the shoulder and said, "Sorry, that was about Jack." And then they give him a new paper. He starts reading all these things about how I really need to work on this, and I need to. So the whole room was laughing. Okay.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing. Don't take yourself too seriously, or all these. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
should be fun to be
Absolutely.
living.
Absolutely.
So it's not. Yeah.
No, well, this has been amazing, and I wanted to also ask, if there's anything else you want to tell our listeners today about the real and upcoming things that you're doing and engaging them, because I think at the end of the day, it's a great name. These are real conversations. We're all human. What was the band that said we're here for a good time, not a long time, and hopefully that community kicks in when it is a tough time. But you're doing amazing stuff, Shawn. And if there's anything else you want to wrap up
No,
with,
I say just kind of, you want to check out more, go to the website, thereal.care. Yeah, we're also looking for ambassadors in different cities, and that's pretty simple. And then, we have the investment side. So we put on these different events. So the next event will be in London, June 9th and 10th. So the website there is the real.events. So those are some of the things that we got cooking.
Fantastic. Well, great talking to you today, Shawn, and keep doing the amazing work. And look forward to coming out to events and wearing my hat and
looking good,
and putting on my toque as well when I need it. When it's cold. So I'm happy to have them.
Yeah, I know you need it more than me in Canada. So.